How are we all? On the downhill slope towards cocktail hour. Very exciting. I'm excited anyway. So my name is Ross, and founder and CEO of a company called Valuize, which I'll introduce in a second. And we're going to go pretty deep into a couple of concepts here. This isn't going to be a overly, we're going to talk some tactics, but it's not going to be overly tactical. It's more going to be fairly scientific almost, looking at getting deep into some revenue model theory and how this then maps to how we can optimize the design of our customer success strategies. Just so I can tailor to an extent, make this as valuable as possible to all of you. 3 questions. Who works for a B2B company? Anyone BDC or B2B2C? No? Does anyone not have a recurring revenue model? I.e., do you still maybe sell perpetual licensing or just services? Everyone's recurring revenue? Excellent. All the questions have been answered correctly so far. And third question is, does your company or within maybe your actual team, do you have any sort of pre-sales function, in what you might call them solution engineers, sales engineers, pre-sales consultants? Anyone not have it? Sort of quasi? Okay, perfect. That's good. That's good. And this will all become clear as to why I'm asking these questions. As we go through this, stop me, challenge me, ask me questions. We can I can tap dance my way through this. So if you want to get it, I would like this to be interactive. So if there are questions as we go, feel free. No questions from Bob though, that's not allowed. And certainly we'll have questions at the end as well. Quickly to introduce Valuize very briefly. What we do is help B2B software companies, mostly enterprise companies, expand and retain their customers and revenue at scale. So we do that by helping build and design what we define as their customer success strategies, which I'll get into in a second. And then we help them actually operationalize the execution of those customer success strategies and scale it through automation. And this is where the technology piece comes in. So we're very much kind of strategy plus technology. We're a team of experienced CS leaders and CS professionals. We have 15 consulting people in the team right now, growing very, very fast. And we've worked with the likes of GE Digital, Splunk, working with those companies, Waters Clear, Databricks. So a lot of sort of companies who are both on the cutting edge of their associated domains, but also come from a long legacy, have a long history. Waters Clear is something like 100 and something years old. And so they've gone through a lot of transition or are going through a lot of transition from a revenue model perspective as well as a customer lifecycle perspective. We're headquartered in beautiful Vancouver, Canada. That is where I'm based now. My funny accent is from London, which we'll get into in a second. We have a base in Denver as well, but largely we run decentralized. So on to our focus for obviously these next 2 days, which is customer success. And at Valuize, when we think customer success and customer success strategy and drill into those concepts, for example, onboarding, which is one of our focus today, we think within a customer lifecycle context, which isn't particularly a revelation. I think most companies now are looking at their revenue strategy, their business model, their CS strategy within the context of customer lifecycle phases. We talk acquisition, adoption, retention, and expansion, very much based on the TSIA layer model, land, adopt, expand, renew, if you're familiar with that. This COG concept is important to us in terms of recognizing that there is no retention and expansion without nailing adoption. And we'll talk about, well, what does adoption mean in a second. And of course, there cannot be any adoption, retention, and expansion without any customers who we must acquire. But we don't only look at, this is one half of, or one side of the dimension of customer success strategy for us. The other side is thinking about value. And so we talk about a value cycle. And that if we all, and I'm sure someone disagree with me if you do, but I think we would all agree that delivering measurable value is the nucleus of a successful customer success strategy, because if we're not doing that, we can't truly be achieving adoption. But to enable us to scalably, efficiently, and repeatedly deliver measurable value, we believe as Valuize that there is a cycle we must go through with each customer around diagnosing, quantifying, prescribing, and getting the customer to agree what that value will be. And then we can move forward and deliver it. And we believe that this value cycle fuels a successful customer life cycle in a B2B software company, and that we need to have the value cycle overlaid the customer life cycle. So if you look at that, and why does this relate to the theme of kickstarting onboarding during the sales process? If again, anyone challenge me, but if we agree that the retention and expansion of our customers and revenue is the ultimate outcome of our customer success strategy, and is ultimately the lifeblood of any company with a recurring revenue model, a subscription revenue model, then we need to nail the equation of adoption. And for us, nailing adoption, achieving adoption, is enabling our customers to realize recurring measurable value. So we need to be able to deliver that value and measure it. For onboarding, our definition of onboarding, which to us is a component, a very key component, arguably the most important component of the overall adoption equation, to be able to nail onboarding, we need to be able to nail that first value. Now, it might not just be one, it might be 2 or 3 value moments that you might define makes up your onboarding stage, but it's at least one. There has to be first value delivered and measured in our mind for onboarding to be a successful stage of your customer life cycle, and for us to be able to deem onboarding complete on a per customer basis. To achieve that first value delivery and make it measurable, we believe this value cycle must be performed. And it must be performed across all our customer segments. It must be performed on a per customer basis. What I'm going to talk about today is why and how important it is for that part of the value cycle around diagnosis, quantification, prescription, and agreement to happen during customer acquisition, to enable onboarding to be successfully performed and to mitigate a number of risks that exist for our goal of retention and expansion if we don't nail that onboarding step. And what we at Valuize, especially when we work with enterprise companies, sort of talk about and label this concept as, is this is what pre-sales strategy should be. Now, I don't care, we don't care as Valuize whether our clients and the companies we're talking with call it pre-sales strategy or not. And I don't care whether they deem that to be the role of a pre-sales consultant, a sales engineer, or an account executive. What we're very excited to be seeing is a trend in the industry, and certainly in the clients we work with, of this evolution of a customer success architect, replacing this pre-sales, traditional pre-sales function. But again, what it's called, what you call the strategy, who is doing it, is a secondary consideration for me, and certainly for this session today. It's someone needs to be doing these steps to enable us to really nail onboarding. And I think if we can complete these steps and integrate these steps into our acquisition motion, into our pre-sales strategy, then we get to kickstart onboarding. Because if we get to complete these, we get to hit day one of the customer life cycle with a plan to get them to that first value, which we know is going to be measurable, is going to be accepted by the customer, and we get to complete onboarding very quickly and move on. So today, what we're going to do is I'm going to explain why we have this belief, why we have this methodology based on that value cycle, how some of my history and my career kind of led us to really adopting this as a methodology in Valuize. We'll quickly look at what we see as the current state of pre-sale strategy in a lot of B2B software companies, which is amusing, if nothing else. And then we'll talk about how could we evolve the pre-sale strategy to own that value life cycle and really execute on it to allow us to achieve this goal of kickstarting onboarding during the sales cycle. Any questions? Anything super unclear yet? I'm sure there's still, what? What does he mean? But we're good so far? Okay, let's carry on. So gain share. What on earth do I mean by gain share? Why am I talking about gain share? Anyone know where this is? My accent is a clue. So this is London, this is Canary Wharf, and this is where I spent far too many late nights, not doing fun stuff like partying, but actually in that Barclays building and in that building there, which was Lehman Brothers at the time. So this is kind of early to mid-2000s, and I was working for a very, very large software managed services, IT services company, and leading what we, at the time, we defined as pre-sales as well as implementation for the software business unit, and closed and architected kind of the pre-sales side of the strategy, 9-figure contracts with both Barclays, Lloyds TSB, NHS, and these were worth in sort of 150, 300 million US dollars in terms of translating it from pounds. And these contracts were gain share contracts. And this was a very, very instrumental time of my career. And really, and I was just in my mid-20s doing this. It was an incredible opportunity I had. And it really laid the foundation for what we've built in Valuize and the methodologies we have. And it just so happened to become extremely relevant once this subscription economy exploded in the last 5 to 7 years, and this emergence of SaaS companies with these subscription revenue models. So what I was doing with these 9-figure contracts and what we were closing was putting in gain share models. And quickly, for anyone not familiar with this concept of a gain share contract, it's ultimately the nirvana contract if you want to have and require a complete alignment between a vendor and a customer around delivering value. In that, a gain share contract requires the service provider, in which case this was my company, or the company I was working for, to deliver value to the customer. And that value is being represented in the form of dollar savings, or pound savings as the case was. And so for every pound we saved them through the services and products we were providing them and delivering to them, we shared that money. And so if we were able to, say, save the customer £1 million or $1 million in a year, we would have typically a 50-50 split, and we would take 500K. So if we didn't successfully deliver our service, the customer didn't realize any gain, and we didn't make any money. So we had to deliver value. From a commercial risk profile, these gain share contracts were extremely high for the company I worked for, because there was no major upfront payment. There was no, oh, buy this and trust us, it will work, but pay for it now. It was, partner with us on this journey, let us come in and deliver our services, and we're so confident that we can deliver gain in the form of savings, that we're going to pay ourselves out of that gain. And ultimately, if we were able to do this, then our commercial risk within the contract went down because we were earning gain and paying ourselves. If you look at it the other way around in terms of the contract value on the x-axis, with a gain share model, the more value we delivered, the more we got paid. Eventually, we'd be able to get our customer acquisition costs back, which were a factor for this type of business, way before CAC and CAC payback was even a part of the dialect in business. These unit economics around, well, we're paying to acquire this customer, we need to get that money back, and now there's a time period within which we need to at least be able to deliver some value to get that customer acquisition cost back, which is a concept I think most of us will be familiar with and very important to software businesses today with recurring revenue models. It was absolutely a feature here. And so our contract success and the success of our business depended on delivering value, i.e. gain, through the delivery of our services to make sure that on day one we had this trend in the gain share model in terms of us being able to make money and obviously the customer realizing value. We instituted this process around, we were compelled to have this process around defining what the value was and defining what the gain was. If we didn't have a watertight agreement with Barclays, for example, Barclays Bank, around what is the definition of gain, how are we going to measure it, how are we going to value it, and get them to agree that contractually. And this is why I was in Canary Wharf so often at 2 a.m., because I was with lawyers just hashing this stuff out, all pre-sale. Because if we didn't get that clearly defined, then there was huge risk that my company wasn't going to get paid. So we had to do that during the sales motion, during the acquisition motion, and this was our pre-sale strategy. And we had to get all of this done before day one of the contract, before day one of the customer lifetime, because from day one, we had to start delivering value, achieving that gain, because my company needed to get paid. So we fast forward now to 2019, subscription economy has exploded, according to Zuora, and it seems to be true. Everyone here, I think, has an employer or is working with a company in a company that has a recurring revenue model. It might not be subscription per se, maybe it's consumption. If we break those models down, it's extremely similar to what I was doing with GainShare in the early to mid 2000s. In that, with GainShare, we need to deliver a successful service, generate gain to pay ourselves. With subscription licensing and subscription revenue in software, it's the same concept. We need to drive successful product adoption to get value realized by the customer. If we can do that, what we get through successful adoption is retention and expansion, which if you look at the unit economics, which we're about to do in a subscription revenue model, it's the lifeblood of our business. And so that is how important, and I think as customer success leaders and professionals here, there's no question mark around the importance of adoption. What I'm trying to highlight here is the importance of nailing that concept around adoption as soon as possible and getting that ball rolling on day one. Because again, our contract value in terms of the lifetime value, LTV, pretty popular metric, arguably useless, but it's a good conceptual way at least to think about this problem, that our lifetime value of our customer is driven by the ability to retain and expand the customer. We retain and expand the customer by driving product adoption. So our ability to drive product adoption mirrors lifetime value. And if we can nail adoption, we can nail lifetime value, we can make sure we get our customer acquisition cost paid back to us, we can make sure we get that done as quickly as possible in terms of balancing the acquisition, the ARR, and the subscription terms, but we still need to retain them. Let's say CAC payback for an enterprise company averages, well, a good average is a year. Some get into 18 months to 2 years, but we need to be able to keep that customer. We need to be able to renew that customer at least for that time period to get that CAC payback, and we do that through adoption. So you're not going to be surprised where this is going. In software today, in 2019, in companies with a recurring revenue model, we need to nail adoption. We need to nail value delivery and measurement. And as we all, again, I think know as CS professionals, onboarding is critical. It's the most important phase, in our opinion, certainly at Valuize, of the overall adoption process. To achieve adoption, we need to get the customer to first value. Per the economics of the subscription revenue model, that first value delivery and measurement needs to start as soon as possible. What we at Valuize believe is to be able to effectively deliver and measure that first value, we have to complete these steps first. And we have not got time in a B2B software subscription revenue model to do those 4 steps post-sale. It's too risky from a time perspective. It's too risky from just an execution perspective in terms of, do you still have executive stakeholder commitment and buy-in and interest, et cetera, to help you go through these steps once they've signed the PO and they've sailed off to their next strategic venture. So we believe it has to happen during the acquisition motion, and we believe it has to happen through pre-sales. Pre-sales today, though, or what is happening pre-sales that we see in the B2B software companies we work with and talk to, and a lot of my career was based in working in pre-sales and leading pre-sales functions. And I did my best and succeeded mostly to move on from what we're about to look at. But the reality today with pre-sales is that there are 3 core scenarios happening, all of which certainly don't help execute that value life cycle and often hinder it, and therefore hinder our ability to successfully deliver onboarding, let alone kickstart onboarding pre-sale. First one is that pre-sales are spending their time doing this. All they do is turn up and they deliver dog and pony shows. And again, this could be the AE doing this, or this could be someone with who's got the pre-sales title, but they're out doing the dog and pony show. They're saying, hey, my product has all these feature functions. Let me show you all these feature functions. Let me explain to you how they all magically combine to achieve this glorious high-level value proposition or this big, hairy, audacious goal, and try and differentiate on that basis. This is not adding any value in terms of helping us understand how we can make this customer successful, i.e., how can we get this customer to first value? The other thing a lot of pre-sales teams and pre-sales functions, people in the pre-sales world are doing is chasing geese in the form of working on RFPs, and again, very prevalent in the enterprise space. And this kind of cycle of just waving in the wind, just achieving nothing, of working on RFPs when the salesperson gets it in their spam folder and he's like, oh my god, and the fact that it's due in 3 days and has a million questions in it and they know nothing about the opportunity, it's still, well, absolutely, we've got to respond. And so these people who are experts in your product, and we'll get into the expertise concept in a second, but these team members in your company who are experts in your solution, your domain, your product, understand your customers, can have value-based conversations and often perform this value cycle, are wasting their time doing a lot of this. Now, where they are able to engage with customers in a more meaningful conversation and use their expertise, this is typically what happens in that scenario.
Our company has a new strategic initiative to increase market penetration, maximize brand loyalty, and enhance intangible assets. In pursuit of these objectives, we've started a new project for which we require 7 red lines. I understand your company can help us in this matter.
Of course. Walter here will be the project manager. Walter, we can do this, can't we?
Yes, of course. Anderson here is our expert in all matters related to the drawing of red lines. We've brought him along today to share his professional opinion.
Nice to meet you. Well, you all know me. This is Justine, our company's design specialist.
Hello.
We need you to draw 7 red lines, all of them strictly perpendicular, some with green ink and some with transparent. Can you do that?
No, I'm afraid
Let's not rush into any hasty answers, Anderson. The task has been set and needs to be carried out. At the end of the day, you are an expert.
The term red line implies the color of the line to be red. To draw a red line with green ink is, well, if it's not exactly impossible, it's pretty close to being impossible.
What does that even mean? Impossible.
I mean, it is possible. There are some people, say, suffering from color blindness, for whom the color of the lines doesn't really make a difference. But I'm quite sure that the target audience of your project doesn't consist solely of such people.
So in principle, this is possible.
I'll simplify. A line as such can be drawn with absolutely any ink, but if you want to get a red line, you need to use red ink.
What if we draw them with blue ink?
It still won't work. If you use blue ink, you'll get blue lines. And what exactly did you mean when you talked about the transparent ink?
How to better explain? I'm sure you know what transparent means.
Yes, I do.
And what a red line means. I hope I don't need to explain to you.
Of course not.
Well, you need to draw a red line with transparent ink.
Could you describe what you imagine the end result would look like?
Oh, come on, Anderson. What have we got here? Kindergarten.
No, I'm just trying to get
Let's not waste our time with these unproductive quarrels. The task has been set, the task is plain and clear. Now, if you have any specific questions, then go ahead.
You're the expert here.
But that is unfortunately, and again, I mean, anyone feel their pre-sales team doesn't spend most of their time doing one or some combination of those 3 things? And it's a missed opportunity, a lot of nodding heads. And I think genuinely, the team that we would regard as owning this pre-sales concept, there's a lot of expertise in there. There's a lot of value they can offer in terms of helping execute our overall customer success strategy. But they just need to be unchained, if you like, from some of these traditional principles. And I think some of this framework I'm about to present and some of this sort of more actionable points in it, maybe a way of at least starting the conversation with your team, your pre-sales teams, or your sales teams, or if you're fortunate enough to be in an organization where you're already investing in this concept of customer success architects, or whatever you're deciding to call them, that you could start using this framework to optimize the role that they're performing and really, again, achieve this goal of kickstarting onboarding pre-sale by focusing on how are we going to design and deliver this first value. Again, as a reminder, just very quickly, the value cycle is value diagnosis, quantification, prescription, and agreement. The outcome of that is to allow us to start delivering value and measuring that value as quickly as possible as part of the onboarding phase. And once we get to that place of that value's been delivered and the customer has seen the measurable results, we designate onboarding as being complete. So we need to think with the end in mind, and we always kind of do this at Valuize. We start with the end in mind and reverse engineer. So how do we actually define the delivery of value? And I bring this up not to be kind of have people sucking eggs or to be condescending, but again, in my professional experience across my career and then through the many organizations we help as Valuize, the question of what value does your product deliver and how do you measure it is shockingly not answered in a lot of companies. And so we need to start there around how does my company, how does my service, how does my product deliver measurable value? Because if we can't define that, we can't answer that question, how can we possibly architect it? How can we possibly prescribe it, quantify it, get agreement, and diagnose it if we don't know what that value is? And so some first principles to consider around that question of, let's validate that we know what the value of our product and our service is, that we can define a first value and make it measurable. First of all, defining adoption. So value equals adoption. Value realization equals adoption. Defining adoption to us, this is our definition of adoption. Adoption is the recurring achievement of measurable value, which is realized by the customer through usage of the product. It's not just simply the customers using the product. They're using it in such a way that they achieve measurable recurring value. And within that definition sits the definition of onboarding. And onboarding is the achievement of that first piece of measurable value through their usage of your product or products. So that is kind of the first principle we believe in and that we prescribe. With that given, to be able to deliver value, we need to define the outcomes that are going to represent that value realization for the customer. We believe those outcomes, yes, should be measurable. We believe that they need to be prescriptive. And this prescriptive theme is, again, integral to what we do with the organizations we work. Because of the pressure of the unit economics of a recurring revenue model, the fact that we can't spend whatever we like anymore on customer acquisition cost, unless we're selling like the biggest and most specialized of enterprise platforms. But even there, it's challenging to spend what we want on CAC these days. And we certainly can't spend as much as we could possibly imagine we would love to spend post-sale around retaining customers, our customer retention cost. Because of that, we can't go in with a blank canvas, a blank sheet of paper to every customer and say, tell me what outcomes you'd like to achieve, and then work out how we're going to deliver those outcomes. We need to go in prescriptive. We need to say, these are the outcomes we achieve with our product or our service. This is how we do it. Does that align with what you're seeking to achieve? So they've got to be prescriptive. They've got to be detailed enough to serve as adoption milestones. An outcome to us is not, our product will help you make more money. Because I've never seen a product in my life that actually can measurably be accountable for making their client more money in B2B software. They're going to contribute to the achievement of making more money. But there are so many variables that the software vendor can't control that relate to the making of more money, that can't be their measurable outcome. So we need to define what are the outcomes. We call these things value-based outcomes in Valuize. What are these outcomes that we can define that are measurable, are prescriptive, and that we as a vendor control the achievement of in conjunction with our customer, and we can have accountability around, and that we as a vendor can be confident to sign up with the customer to achieve and put our subscription revenue model on the line for. If we can define these outcomes, we then need to define how we achieve those outcomes. So we need to define what are the activities, what are the roles, what's the data we need, what additional systems do we need to enable these outcomes to be achieved, again, in an efficient manner. That efficiency, again, points back to the need for efficiency in our overall revenue model because of the pressure a subscription revenue model has around the efficiency side. And again, they should be prescriptive. So why should they be prescriptive? They should be prescriptive because, again, it gives you scalability and efficiency in that you've got a common set of playbooks that your CS team, your PS team, all the teams involved in delivering these outcomes, they can follow it and you can drive efficiency, economies of scale, all that fun stuff. It also needs to be prescriptive because it gives your customer and your prospects confidence that you know what you're doing. And that you're not going in saying, well, yeah, I've got this feature function collection here that resembles a software product. You tell me what you want to achieve with it and how you want to achieve it. Customers don't want to buy like that anymore. They want to be educated. They want to be prescribed to. If you are familiar with, say, the Challenger sales methodology, lots of data now where customers want to be prescribed to. And this is a huge opportunity for customer success, because we as customer success, if we can build these prescriptions within our company, we start to take control post-sale, because we know what's coming down the pipe. We know that we're going to get customers who are looking for outcomes that we know we as a CS organization can deliver, and they're looking to achieve those outcomes in a way that we can deliver. So these are some of the principles we believe in, and these two here form the foundation of what we believe is the good old customer journey map. And customer journey mapping, the existence of a customer journey map is, massively overused term these days. Everyone's got a different definition within, on a per company basis. But to us, this is the first layer. This is the foundation of a customer journey map. And from these principles and from the completion of these two design kind of exercises are born our playbooks for onboarding, escalations, et cetera, that our CS team can follow. And out of those playbooks are born your success blocks and the other components that you need to have operationalized in Totango to allow those playbooks to be executed. So we see a 3-level hierarchy, but we can't do level 2, which is the design of the playbooks. We can't do level 3, which is the operationalization of those playbooks in Totango, unless we do level 1. So this is where we want to start. So with that said, if we've got those first principles in place, we can now start architecting value pre-sale. And again, you can take this and start applying it post-sale. I mean, this may be oh my God, I'm never going to get my sales organization, my pre-sales organization, or my own organization to start doing this pre-sale in a month of Sundays, which I get. It could be a political, it could be a cultural thing. It's not impossible. You can get there, you can build a business case to get the change made, but maybe this is something you just start applying in your onboarding process post-sale. But our prescription here from Valuize is to start doing this pre-sale. So value diagnosis. Out of our library, out of our medicine kit of prescriptions or prescriptive outcomes, we need to understand which of these will apply to the prospect. So we need to do diagnosis. We need to understand their current state. Again, nothing particularly revolutionary here, but the concept of discovery around what are the outcomes, what's the value we as a software vendor can deliver to our customer, again, is done quite often in a very light-hearted way. There's a lot of discovery done around how can these people buy my software, but there's not much discovery often done around how can this company realize value from my solution. But we need to do that diagnosis, and we need to be able to understand their current state at a quantified level. So we need to be able to say, okay, we think these outcomes will get you to your overall strategic goals, but for each outcome, we want to understand how you're doing this today or not doing this today, as the case may be. So we can quantify a baseline, and that enables us to start measuring and be measurable. Because it's all very well saying, hey, now you've achieved this one outcome in onboarding. This process is now taking an hour a day. Great. Well, an hour a day relative to what? Was it an hour and a half a day before, or was it a week? We need to be able to have that current state baseline to be able to provide the measurements which are meaningful for the customer to interpret the value that they've realized. We've then got to prescribe this. We've then got to prescribe this equation. So we've diagnosed what the outcomes are. We've got the due diligence done around what would the actual measurable gain be of achieving those outcomes, and we need to prescribe that back to the prospect to say, hey, if you invest whatever it is, this much ARR with us, and subscribe to this product or platform, this is the value you're going to realize, and this is how we're going to measure it. And again, as I say, this prescriptive motion is, yes, very powerful for an effective, and almost, in our opinion, necessary to have an effective customer success strategy and specifically an onboarding process. But it's a very, very powerful sales motion. And where we've helped a lot of companies change their sales motion to start accommodating this stuff, that's the pitch we've used into the sales organizations to get them to change, to say, hey, we've got a much better way for you to make sales, and it's this. The fact that it helps the CS strategy as well is a nice thing as well. So we diagnosed, we quantified, we prescribed back we have to get a response back from the customer. We have to get a response back from the prospect. They have to agree to this. Why acquire a customer if they're not either willing to achieve the value that you know you can deliver, or why acquire a customer who is not willing to do the things that you know need to be done to realize that value or to achieve that value? And I don't mean things just like you need to turn up to this enablement session, you need to turn up to this onboarding session, you need to make sure that your users are aware of what we're doing here, and we need a communication plan in place. It's more fundamental items like, do we have your willingness to do what we need around data migration, for example? And just prescribe this stuff up front. And there's typically a very strong hesitation within organizations to say, well, we don't want to scare them off. We don't want to say, well, this is everything we're going to have to do to get you to this value, because they're going to get scared off. They're going to they're going to think it's too complicated, it's going to take too much time, et cetera, et cetera. Nonsense. Customers want to hear this, and they're going to buy from you because you tell them this. And this is where Totango we think, is very powerful as a vendor in this equation with their own customer success strategy, and that they lead with, this is what we're going to do to get you to value in the sales cycle, as opposed to, trust us, buy these feature functions, we'll get you to this big, hairy, audacious goal. That's all you need to know. Doesn't work anymore. And again, but you need this from a risk mitigation perspective to say, for onboarding is going to achieve this piece of value for you. Here's how you're going to measure it. Here's what it's going to be worth. And here's what we're going to have to do to get you there. And to get the customer to agree that pre-sale, we then hit day one with a plan to start getting them to value. So in conclusion, because I'm about to get the hook, everything leads back to the unit economics of your recurring revenue model. That is how your business works. This is how we build business cases for investments in customer success strategy, customer success technology, and so on. The lifeblood of your revenue model is retention and expansion, as we know. Onboarding, as we know, is critical to that overall customer life cycle. Onboarding, in our opinion, is about achieving that first value, and that first value needs to be measurable. To achieve measurable value and deliver that to your customers, we believe we need to follow this value cycle. And we believe that within, especially organizations where I think a lot of you are from enterprise organizations, where you have some sort of pre-sales function made up of people who are experts in your products, your domain, your customers, these steps can and should happen pre-sale. And it's an amazing bridge to put in place that will connect your CS organization with your sales organization. Because it's not about who's accountable for actually winning the deal or any of that stuff. It's, do we have these concepts defined? Because if we can then plug these into your success blocks. We can have these define your goals for your success blocks, and we nail onboarding as efficiently and effectively as possible. I will pause there. I could keep going for hours, but appreciate your time. Any questions?
Questions?
So taking a look at the pre-sale strategy, do you have any familiarity around MEDDIC?
Yes.
And how does that fit into the methodology that you're putting up here today?
I don't know MEDDIC in detail. MEDDIC as an example of the sales qualification discovery frameworks that are out there. They're like all these types of frameworks. They have their strengths in terms of certain objectives that they achieve for the organization, whether it be a more efficient sales cycle or a more effective sales cycle from a win rate perspective. What we look at, even things like the more overall sales methodologies like Challenger, is that they're still focused ultimately and weighted towards acquire anyone at any cost. And a lot of them are doing better now at removing the at any cost element because they know it doesn't fly from a subscription revenue model. CRO sales leaders are getting measured on CAC, so they need to be efficient there. But the concept around acquiring the right customer, acquiring the ideal customer profile, that we see it with MEDDIC and the overall sales methodologies out there, we still think is very, very light. And we still think customer success as a strategy, as an organization, has to come to the table, demand a seat at the table in the acquisition motion to make sure this stuff is being done. And we believe that trend is happening. We believe that, or we're seeing with the data exists, that pre-sales as a function, as a strategy, as a team is increasingly coming under the CCO, which is fantastic. And they're becoming these customer success architects and doing this work, as opposed to just turning up and demoing and doing dog and pony shows. So the short answer is yes, it goes to some degree, it will help with this. But the framework I presented, we believe, is still, it's lacking in most of these methodologies, and that it's not a case of one or the other. It's just making sure we've got these key principles.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ross, I've worked with the MEDDIC methodology before. I don't think it's an either or. I think what Ross described actually complements it. It just, it goes a little bit heavier in some of that discovery you're doing. But I think you can certainly work it into that framework or Challenger or pick your solution selling methodology.
And again, there's, especially in that framework, there's a lot going on in there. And if none of it's happening in your organization today, but you have at least completed the first milestone, which is the definition of measurable value outcomes, then just start with this step. I'd reverse engineer it and just say, right, well, we can't just roll this entire thing in. At least start here. At least start as a milestone in your sales process, as a milestone in your transition process from sales to post-sale. Do that customer agreement piece. Because it's going to help your sales team win more deals apart from anything else, but it's also going to give you that head start and that risk mitigation around onboarding.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank
Perfect.
you,
We're on
Ross.
time. Thank you.